for many, many years today and many, many years to come. Please welcome Mariam.
Hi, everyone. I'm very honored and proud to be here with you today. I have to tell you, we can't really see many of you very well because of the lights. Aside from that, what I was saying is that I'm very, very honored and proud to be here with you today and to actually introduce this panel, the first panel that we are having, which is titled Zionism, Imperialism, and the Shifting Battlefield. It's not by chance that this is going to be the first panel opening the many discussions that we are going to have throughout these days at this conference. This session actually provides a critical overview of the current status and evolving dynamics of Zionism and imperialism in the Arab world. And in fact, as I was saying, it's not a case, it's not by chance that we are opening with this discussion. Because for the past 2 years, and what has been happening for the past 2 years, the genocidal war that has been imposed on our people have unmasked the complicity of the whole international system in the colonial project that Zionism has been implementing for over a century. It has become clear and evident to everyone that Zionism is the outcome, the product, but also the necessary continuity of the imperialist project and practices that have been imposed on the Arab people and other peoples all over the world throughout centuries of imperialist politics and American and European interest in the global dynamics. It is therefore important to actually understand what are these interests and the political gains that keep impacting our region and our people. At the same time, the past 2 years have also made clear that our people, Palestinians in Gaza, but also in all other geographies, are not, and along with the Arab people, are not letting this project going unchallenged. Gaza, Palestine, and the Arab people are at the forefront of the anti-colonial struggles that require systemic change. And this change can come and can be understood within this global dimension. This is what we want to discuss here today. This is what we want to highlight here today. That there is a regional project, there is an imperial project that is being implemented through Zionism, and where Zionism is the main actor in imposing imperialist project, but there is also a determination to challenge that system and to resist it. We are here to discuss this global dimension with prominent speakers. We will outline the trajectory and agendas driving 2 years of Zionism and US-led imperialist genocide in Gaza and aggression in the region, with the analysis of 3 guests that I'm welcoming here. First of all, we have Musa Sadah, who is joining us online. Then we have Rajas Abdelhaq, and finally we have Ustaz Anil Masri. So, Musa Sadah is a writer and a researcher specializing in the political dynamics and Arab liberation with a focus on resistance movement, anti-colonial struggle, and the culture of resistance. Raja Abdel Haq is a Palestinian political activist, researcher, and community organizer. Raja is the president of Tamkeen Movement, co-founder of Quds News Network, and a former executive director of the Islamic Leadership Council of New York. Raja has a master's degree in political science from Brooklyn College. And Ustaz Hani al-Masri is one of the founders and currently the Director General of the Palestinian Center for Policy Research and Strategic Studies, Masarat. He was the founder and Director General of the Palestinian Media Research and Study Center, Badil, in the period between 2005 and 2011. Mr. Masri is a well-known political activist, journalist, and several Palestinians and Middle East magazines have published his pieces and his analysis, including Al-Quds, Al-Arabi Al-Jadid, Al-Safir, and Al-Ayyam. Mr. Masri is also a regular participant and president of international meetings and conferences. From 1981 and 1989, he was a member of the editorial board of Al-Hadaf magazine, prior to 2005, he served as the general manager of the printing and publication department at the Ministry of Information for a decade. He also served as a member of the Committee on Government in the formal Palestinian Reconciliation Dialogue held in Cairo in 2009, and up until 2021, he was also a member of the Board of Trustees of the Arafat Foundation. We will start asking a few questions to our first speaker, which is Musa. So, Musa, over the past 2 years, the US and Israel have waged a military campaign against Palestine, Yemen, Lebanon, Syria, and Iran. What have been the main future and goals of the campaign? What is the relation between the American strategy in Gaza and the Zionist strategy? And how has it affected the trajectory of resistance to US and Zionist domination in the region? Thank you, Musa.
Thank you very much. Salam, everyone. I believe the best way to answer this question is by looking at America's role in the region in the past 2 years from a historical perspective. The regional system in our Arab land, composed of political units we call states, along with the Zionist entity, was not a natural formation, but rather a product of 2 colonial projects. The Sykes-Picot Agreement, which created the borders of these states, and the Balfour Declaration, which established a European settler colony in Palestine. The enduring imperial objective of Europe, America, Zionism has been to preserve this historical structure of the region by securing 2 main objectives. First, to ensure the people of the region practice politics, if they are allowed at all to do so, remains confined in each designated unit, in each state, and within its local political identity. In other words, preventing any political practices that transcend these borders into the broader Arab domain, and to mobilize the general Arab public. Second, to secure the Zionist colony and its monopoly over power and political certainty. What happened in October 7th struck both of these objectives. One, it dealt a major blow to the Israeli entity to engage in politics and resistance that transcend borders across the entire geography of the region, appealing to broader, grand Arab and Islamic identities as a tool. In response, the United States and its allies sought above all to shield Israel from this, to safeguard the historical outcome of the Balfour Declaration. Yet, beyond Israel itself, Washington's campaign also continues to aim at preserving the regional system that emerges from the imperial and the colonial designs 100 years ago. Their strategy combined military force and psychological intimidation and offering Israel unlimited support to carry out its dirtiest act, the crime of genocide. We have to remember here that the genocide unfolding now in Gaza is a continuation of the Zionist project of ethnic cleansing and colonizing Palestine. But it's also an American response to the challenges against their century-long colonial designs of our region. Their goal is to send us a message to us and to the future generation that is what to await us if we ever dare to break free from the political cages of this imposed regional political order. What awaits us is a genocide. As empires are not a rational entity, they are not governed only by reason in calculating their interests, but rather by feelings of arrogance, anger, Orientalism, superiority, and racism. Still, this does not mean that the US and the Zionist strategies are identical. The political and emotional drivers of Washington might be somewhat less reckless than the Zionists. Israel intends on completing the Balfour project from the river to the sea, through the total extermination of the Palestinians and the brazen assertion of the Greater Israel. Here, however, where the legacy of Sykes-Picot collides in some degree with that Balfour, the current relationship between the US and Israel is therefore by finding a formula that expands the Zionist project and completing the Balfour Declaration while forcing an unprecedented constraints in the Arab political entities and population. And here lies the shift in the battlefields now. And that's what we are up against in the future, is what we can call it the architecture, the historical architecture, the Greater Israel. This dynamics is the trajectory, but it also holds to open up spaces that we must and we might exploit. The aim of the Americans in the past 2 years was to force all political actors to withdraw and retreat into their local political domain, their national arena. Iraqis into Iraq, Lebanese into Lebanon, Syrians into Syria, Egypt into Egypt, and etc. Because of that, the path of resistance has suffered setback because of their hesitation to fully embrace the political practices on the broader Arab arena. Yet, the very course policies that the Americans did in the past 2 years, the very course American tools and mindset generates a push and will generate a push of the resistance again towards engaging in politics in the larger Arab arena and relinking the struggle and the effort and the fronts. What we witnessed in the last 2 years is normal in terms of in historical terms. In every liberation movement, there is a push and a pushback and dialect relation with imperialism. And that's the definition of history. This is why the future of the struggle against US and Zionist dominance in the region is measured of how much the resistance organize, mobilize as much as they can in order to become as much as they can one political unit. And I think this conference is a fundamental part of that, as the struggle and momentum against Zionism is not bound by geography. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Musa. This was really enlightening, and this is really bringing us into the core of our discussion here today. I would like to build on what Musa was just saying, to ask Raja to expand a little bit on these dynamics. So, since October 23. We have seen the materialization of the acts of resistance as a strategy of confrontation against imperialist ambitions in the Arab world. Throughout this time, we have seen different phases of the war and different actors in the axis opening a front against Israel and the US. On the other hand, we have also seen imperialism expand its territory, and the axis has experienced significant setbacks. Can you speak more on the development of the axis? and the strategies that can impact on the future in the region. What are the developments at the regional level? And what is the role of the Arab government in this balance of power that we are witnessing today?
Assalamu alaikum. How's it going? I can't see. Okay, now I can see. Get a little bit of energy. It's good to be with you here this year. Thank you very much, Mariam, for facilitating this and for having this panel. Of course, thanks to all of the organizers, especially PYM and all the volunteers for the great work. Last year, I was only able to participate virtually because my 3 daughter monkeys I was busy with them as my wife was traveling. But it's good to be here with all of you today. And I appreciate this new energy that we're providing that is clearly, and I want to build on this based on a conversation about resistance and the axis of resistance and the issue and the struggle that we have overseas. It's very exciting to see that over 100 years of the settler colonial project in Palestine, even before the Balfour Declaration, all the way to today, that the younger generation is more involved, more enlightened, more in depth in the movement, within the circles of the movements than ever before. So this is a testament to not just the cause, it being a just cause, but also a testament to Gaza and Palestine truly being the compass of justice around the world. So when we talk about resistance, even before we even want to ground our discussion about the axis of resistance, and we can talk about this for days, I only have 10 minutes. So I'll be quick on sharing some thoughts on this. Since the beginning of the Zionist project, before even Herzl created the concept of political Zionism in the 1896, in the 1880s, the first Zionist or Jewish Zionist settlers so-called immigrated to Palestine to establish the first settler colonial entity in the land of Palestine. And since that moment, Palestinians, and specifically Palestinian farmers, resisted against this foreign occupation and invasion of the land. And this is an authentic response to European colonialism that was the common denominator around the world in that time. As we all know, specifically since the beginning of 1492, and many of you are familiar with 2 important events that took place that year. Number 1, the Inquisition of Spain, or the Spanish Inquisition. What we know is the displacement of Muslims and Jews from southern Spain, or what we know as Andalus in our history and our tradition, and the so-called discovery of America, the so-called discovery of what we know as Turtle Land, right? Those 2 important positions and moments in time have developed what we have today as modern Western hegemony, that started with the concept that it's no more that we need to fight between ourselves as Europeans. We need to, number 1, purify the blood and the class in Europe, specifically creating the concept of white supremacy, and invade the rest of the world to bring in the goodness from the rest of the world, the wealth of the rest of the world, all the way back to Europe. And this is why so-called America was discovered, to bring in all that gold and to undermine the trade environment that was happening in that region, specifically to India. Europeans at that moment realized, using social Darwinism, using the ideas of the survival of the fittest, and that the white supremacy is the way to lead the world, that everybody else should be a subject to Western hegemony. And Western political, philosophical, and even ideological framing was developed based on those notions, on the notions that it's up to the Europeans to control, dominate, and colonize the rest of the world. Since that moment on, the resistance of the indigenous people of the global South have developed. It was always an authentic indigenous response to a violent colonial project. Whether it's the classic notion of colonialism, where you have European boots on the ground, or settler colonial projects like we have here today in Turtle Land, in Canada, in Australia, in South Africa, and even today in Palestine. The resistance of the region in the Middle East specifically, or what we know as the Middle East, right? And that in itself is a problem when we talk about Eurocentricity and how to divide the world between East and West, based on Europe being the center of the earth. That's an epistemological revolution that we need to come up with terms with, and we need to challenge and get rid of if we truly want to liberate this world. But in addition to that, Palestinian and Arab resistance in the region has gone through so many different time frames and so many different phases. You have times of pure nationalistic approach of resistance, as we know in the Arab Revolution in 1936 and other revolutions leading to 1948. And even after that, you had a secular, communist, socialist, and it has so many different levels, different variation of that in terms of, I don't want to get too deep into those philosophical differentiations, but resistance existed. But after the loss of 48 and then the Naksa in 1967, there was a depression in the region until all the way to what we know as the Islamic Revolution in Iran that brought about and new ideas of imagining the world from an ideological perspective to push back against Western hegemony in the region. And that was pivotal and important in understanding the development of groups like Hezbollah and Islamic Jihad and Hamas in Palestine. They were not developed as a direct response to Iran Islamic Revolution, but that was an incentive, or it was a moral boost to these movements. And until then, all of these Palestinian and Arab and Muslim resistance movements have something in common. And that's what's important to us today, which is European and namely nowadays American hegemony and imperialism in the region, with the usage of its client state and what we know today as a sub-imperial power in the Middle East, which is Israel. The resistance that we are talking about and the resistance that we are analyzing, it stems from the fact that we are facing, number one, a settler colonial project that is violent in its very manifestation. The very existence of a settler colonial project means, and it leads to a violent erasure of the indigenous people of the land. That the people, their culture, their identity, their civilization, their names, their streets, their memory of themselves and their ancestors have to be erased, has to be eliminated. It's a violent process. In addition to that, you have a European and now American hegemony in the region that is trying to subjugate the people of the region by pushing them away from their tradition, from their ideas, from their own imagination of the world, to follow a capitalist, individualist understanding of the world. And not only a capitalist and individualist understanding of the world, but also a capitalist, individualistic understanding of themselves. Meaning that the Arab and the Muslim subject in the region can only see themselves through the capitalist lens, that they are either a consumerist or a production worker. And this is the only way for themselves to see themselves. So resistance comes as a response to those two realities in the region. The only way to undo a violent settler colonial project is through resistance. The only way to undo and undermine and sabotage and mitigate the subjugation of the Arab and the Muslim subjects in the region, the colonized subjects in the region, is through resistance. So when we are talking about the development and the different phases and different stages of resistance, we have to understand that the resistance and the region at large is dealing with these material realities. And that material realities mean, or that those realities mean that the discourse changes. Many people, unfortunately, since the genocide started in Gaza, felt or they were actually blindly lied to by the Biden administration and now the Trump administration. They are actually actively seizing a ceasefire agreement in Gaza. But we have learned now, 2 years after, that America was only buying time for Israel to continue its genocide in Gaza, to destroy the resistance groups in the Middle East, and nowadays to take over Syria, and eventually, and we are currently seeing it, the taking over of Lebanon indirectly through local stooges, or what we know as native informants, that will be more than happy to do the dirty work of the American empire and the Israeli settler colonial project in the region. So, brothers and sisters, this moment away from analysis, this moment for us as a movement in the West, as a movement for liberation, as a movement of resistance, we have to come together and truly take the symbol of Gaza being the compass of our ethical understanding of the world as a way, as a path forward. Gaza is a microcosm of the fight between imperialism, capitalism, white supremacy, and the indigenous people's right to live freely according to their own tradition, according to their own civilization, and according to their own ideologies. We have the movements in the US and the movements across the world have been trying to use the tools of the empires, have been trying to use electoral politics, have been trying to lobby and advocate and protest and do things according to what the empire allows us to do. But the reality is we're going backward in the movement. 2 years in and we cannot stop the genocide because materially we have no power to stop the empire. So we need to take this reality as a stepping stone, as an incentive, as a motivation that the only way to beat evil, which is imperialism and capitalism, is for us to unite together, that the global South and the people of consciousness need to come together and understand that Gaza as the compass represents that fight with imperialism and capitalism. No more are we going to be engaged in movements that are only giving us crumbs. We are planning, and we should be planning to building movements that go beyond breadcrumbs, that go beyond representation, that go beyond basic breadcrumbs that the empire gives us. This is the time where we come together, leftist, Islamist, socialist, I don't care what ideology you have. What matters is we are united under one idea, which is beating imperialism and capitalism. That's the only way. And I want to wrap this up and say that I don't want to trivialize the cause and the genocide in Gaza and the Palestinian cause because we are dealing with so much violence. But the reality is our struggles here in America with basic labor issues, mental health issues, all of those are symptoms of capitalism. Capitalism destroys human beings. It's not just ethically wrong. Materially, it reduces human beings to only consumerists. It reduces us to beings that only care about lusts and desires and material gains, and that's it. And if we allow this to continue, then there will be more Gazas around the world. Because when we are so consumed with our materialistic needs, we would not have the ethical power to fight for justice. So this is the moment we realize that the fight in Gaza is the fight for all of us. No matter how tiny our struggles are, it's all connected with the same fight. And this should be the new path forward for us to fight for justice around the world.
Thank you, Raja. Thank you very much for this analysis that not only highlights the international dimension, but also the great potentiality that we have if we unite as people from the global South, as people who actually understand Zionism as a continuity of imperial politics in the region. But you also brought up a very important point, which is how the US with Israel have been trying to shape the whole region, well beyond Gaza and Palestine, that have been resisting as we have seen, and how we keep doing, for over a century. But they have imposed this war on the whole region, exactly because they also understand the challenges that united people can actually represent for their project, for their interest, and for colonialism in all the different shapes that has been taking so far. So building exactly on this kind of analysis that you have been providing us with, I want to ask Ustaz Hani about the future of Gaza and the future that we need to envisage according to the different strategies that have been implemented by these different international actors. So this genocidal war began in Gaza and looks as if it will end in Gaza. Despite and according to the different strategies and the different roles that regional and international actors have taken, even in facing and in challenging the acts of resistance. So how have regional development affected the different possibilities for Gaza's future? And what are the implications for the people of Palestine and the people of the whole region? More broadly, based on this kind of analysis. Sorry, I just wanted to add that Ustaz Hani will be translated from Arabic to English by Ashraf, who I want to thank. Ashraf is an interpreter from Respond Crisis Translation, rct.org. Many of their translation and translators are based in Gaza, and we wanted to thank Ashraf for supporting us.
Thank you. شكرا جزيلا. أنا كنت ناوي أحكي بالإنجليزي لعندما شفت هذا الحفل المهيب والحماسي اللي دفعني إني أتمسك إني أحكي بالعربي بكون أكثر راحة.
I would like to thank you very much. I was planning to address you in English. However, after I've seen the massive amount of enthusiasm throughout the venue, I decided to actually address you in Arabic.
لا تتصوروا المشاعر التي عشت بها وأنا أشوف هذا الاحتفال المهيب. آلاف الشباب والفلسطينيين والعرب والمناصرين للقضية الفلسطينية ولقضية الحرية والعدالة يتجمعوا في الولايات المتحدة اللي احنا بنقول رأس الحية، رأس الإمبريالية.
You can't imagine how I feel after I see all that younger generation being here under one roof, particularly in the United States of America, which we call the head of the snake technically.
أنا قرأت منذ يومين استطلاع أمريكي بيقول إنه 60% من الأمريكيين يقولون يجب وقف توريد الأسلحة لإسرائيل.
I have read and have seen some sort of consensus that basically 60% of the Americans are saying that they should deprive or basically put some sort of a ban on weapon shipments to Israel.
50% بيوصفوا ما يحدث في غزة إبادة جماعية.
And 50% have classified what's happening in Gaza as genocide or group genocides.
هذا يحدث لأول مرة في الولايات المتحدة.
This is the first time that it happens or has taken place or been voiced out in the United States.
وهذا بسبب عدالة القضية الفلسطينية وتفوقها الأخلاقي، بسالة المقاومة الفلسطينية والدم المسفوك بغزارة في قطاع غزة وفي فلسطين.
And that is definitely because of the moral superiority that we do have and the valor of the Palestinian resistance and the amount of blood that has been abundantly shed in the Gaza Strip.
وأيضا بسبب نشاط الحركات مثل حركتكم هاي اللي لعبت دور وأنا شخصيا كنت مدعو من حركة الشباب الفلسطيني منذ سنوات عدة في إسبانيا في مخيم صيفي، مما يدل على أن هناك استمرارية، والاستمرارية تعمل تراكم، والتراكم الكمي يؤدي في النهاية مهما طال الزمن إلى تغيير نوعي.
Also, this is due to the movement and the role that you guys are playing. And I have been invited by a lot of younger generations, to speak in like Spain and summer camps and other places. And that's what's really making an accumulation and continuation in a quantitative way to lead this movement.
مهم أن نلاحظ أنه بحركات التضامن ليس كلها لسبب إنساني، وإنما في قطاعات متزايدة تناصر الفلسطينيين لأنها بتعتبر القضية الفلسطينية هي راية الحرية والعدالة وحق تقرير المصير، وهذا شيء مهم جدا. أي هم شركاء معنا في النضال ويجب أن نكون معهم شركاء في نضالهم أيضا.
I would like to tell you that, this solidarity movement that we're discussing, it's not only humanitarian or not based only on humanitarian reasons. There's increasing sectors and support for the Palestinians and the Palestinian cause under that banner of freedom, justice, and the right of self-determination.
لذلك عندما تلقيت الدعوة لم أتردد بالموافقة، رغم أن هذا طبعا يترتب عليه مشقة السفر وهناك مخاطر أيضا، ولكن هذا أقل ما يمكن أن نفعله من أجل شعبنا ومن أجل قضيتنا. شكرا للمنظمين، شكرا لهذا الحفل المهيب.
When I received the invite, I did not really hesitate to accept, even though there is so much pain of, having to go through so many things, to come here, and there are so many risks involved. But I would like to thank you and thank the organizers for really taking care of all of this.
قبل أن أجيب على السؤال حول المستقبل، يجب أن نتوقف قليلا عند الماضي، لأنه الماضي هو الذي يفتح طريق المستقبل.
Before I would address the question that was put out here about the future, we always have to go back to the past, because that's how things are based and it opens the way to the future.
كما تعلمون أن الحركة الصهيونية لم يتم إنشائها لحل المسألة اليهودية كما ادعوا.
As you know, the Zionist movement was not really created to solve the Jewish question or the Jewish invite. On the contrary.
وإنما لكي تكون هناك دولة وظيفية تقوم بحماية المصالح الاستعمارية وإبقاء المنطقة أسيرة التخلف والتبعية والتجزئة.
But rather to have some sort of a functional state that protects the colonial interests, and participate in the captivity of underdeveloping and being dependent and causing fragmentation into the society.
وهذه الحركة لم تكن مثل الاستعمار التقليدي، وإنما أرادت تهجير الشعب الفلسطيني وإبادة الشعب الفلسطيني وإلغاء وجود الشعب الفلسطيني. حتى الآن لا يعترفوا بوجود شعب فلسطيني.
And this movement wasn't really what you expect of a traditional movement. On the contrary, it's a movement to sort of annihilate the Palestinian people and cause some sort of an imperialist genocide. And until now, they're not admitting of what is going on.
وهم حاولوا إنه يدعوا اليهود للقدوم إلى فلسطين.
And they invited the Israelis to come to, or the Jews to come to Palestine.
أساس يجي كل اليهود أو غالبيتهم العظمى.
So that the majority of them would actually come and settle.
حتى الآن أقل من 50% من اليهود في فلسطين.
Until this day, there is less than 50% of the Jews in Palestine.
وحتى الآن الشعب الفلسطيني متمسك بأرضه، متمسك بحقوقه، متمسك بمقاومته، ولا يزال عدد الفلسطينيين في فلسطين أكبر من عدد اليهود.
And until this day, because of the Palestinian people are holding onto their land, holding onto their rights, sticking to their resistance, and that's what's causing that the Palestinian population is still much greater than the Jews that are settled there.
حاولوا إنه يستأنفوا معركة الاستقلال كما يقولوا.
They tried to use what they would call, quote unquote, like the Battle of Independence.
بمعنى طرد بقية الشعب الفلسطيني أو القسم الأعظم منه، لأنه ما دام هذا الشعب موجود وبهذه الكثرة لن يكون هناك دولة يهودية ولن تكون نموذج للأمن والرخاء الذي يعني وعدوا اليهود فيه.
Meaning that they're trying to expel the Palestinians. And that exit, or having, kick those individuals out, that's what they thought that would achieve the final, or basically the end goal.
قبل 7 أكتوبر كانوا يتصوروا أن القضية الفلسطينية أصبحت مهمشة ولم يعد لها وجود.
Prior to October 7, they thought, well, the Palestinian cause has become marginalized and it doesn't exist any longer.
وكانوا بعد بالذات الاتفاقات الإبراهيمية بأملوا النفس أنه سيتم تطبيع العلاقات مع عدد كبير من الدول العربية والإسلامية وعلى رأسها السعودية، وبالفعل كان قبل 7 أكتوبر هناك اتفاق ينقص اللمسات الأخيرة.
And actually, based on the Abraham Accords, everything was set prior to like October 7, and everything was into the final detail, like basically pending being signed off on, between normalizing relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia.
وبالتالي يعني تصوروا أنه لم يعد هناك خطر على إسرائيل.
And they felt like, that's it, there is no more danger on the state of Israel.
لذلك الخلافات الداخلية في داخل إسرائيل تفجرت بشكل واسع.
And that is why the internal disputes and disagreements within Israel have erupted widely.
إذا بتتذكروا قبل 7 أكتوبر لمدة عام هناك كان مظاهرات وإضرابات واحتجاجات ضخمة في إسرائيل.
If you would recall, prior to October 7, there was plenty of demonstrations, plenty of strikes, and massive protests that were taking place in Israel.
خلاف حول هوية إسرائيل، حول دور الدين، حول العلمانية، حول الديمقراطية. تتحول إسرائيل أكثر وأكثر إلى دولة دينية ديكتاتورية.
There was a strong role, relating to the Israel and the religion and secularism and, how to approach democracy and so many things that were permissible, in a religious state.
ولذلك حاولوا قبل 7 أكتوبر أقروا قانون القومية عام 2018.
And that is the reason that they tried to implement or pass a law, the native state law of 2018.
الذي يقول أن حق تقرير المصير في هذه البلاد فقط لليهود
That says
ولا يوجد حق للآخرين وخاصة للشعب
the
الفلسطيني.
right to self-determination is only for the Jews, and there is no room for no other rights, especially for the Palestinian people.
وفي عام 2017 أقر حزب سموتريتش وهو وزير المالية ووزير في وزارة الحرب خطة اسمها خطة الحسم.
And in 2017, the person named Smotrich, which is the finance minister, have said basically that there is an end result and this have to come soon or not soon enough.
هذا مهم نحكي لأنه حدث قبل 7 أكتوبر.
This is important to discuss and to mention because this happened before October 7.
شكلت الحكومة الإسرائيلية قبل 7 أكتوبر اللي هي الحكومة الحالية.
And the Israeli government was formed and assembled prior to October 7, which is the current government.
برنامجها جوهره ضم الضفة الغربية والأراضي الفلسطينية.
And the program was mainly in the essence of the destruction or taking over the West Bank and the Palestinian territories.
واستكمال ما لم ينجزوه بال 48 وال 67.
And continuing to what they never finished in 1948 and 1967.
بهذا السياق جاء 7 أكتوبر.
And for that reason, that's when basically, or what initiated October 7.
صحيح أن البيئة المحيطة العربية والدولية وحتى الفلسطينية بسبب الانقسام لم تكن مواتية.
It's true that the Arab and international community and the Palestinian environment was not really being favorable.
ولكن كانت ردة فعل طبيعية لحماية الشعب والقضية فيما لم يملكه الشعب الفلسطيني من إمكانيات.
But it was a normal and natural reaction because that's what the Palestinian people under the conditions and under whatever it is that they have or can do to act.
ذكرني 7 أكتوبر بكومونة باريس، وهي الثورة التي تفجرت وكانت بداية الثورة الأوروبية وتغيير أوروبا والعالم.
7th of October have reminded me of the Commune in Paris, which is the European revolution that have changed actually the Europe and the world.
صحيح أن الكومونة لم تنجح، ولكنها كانت بداية التغيير في العالم كله.
It's true that the Commune never succeeded. However, it was the spiraling or the starting ignition around the globe afterwards.
وقال كارل ماركس عنها أنهم يقفزون نحو السماء ويقومون بأعمال لا يمكن تصديقها.
And Karl Marx back then have mentioned that they're jumping and trying to like grab or touch the sky, and those are things that we have unheard of.
ماذا يجري في غزة منذ عامين؟
It has been happening in Gaza for the past 2 years.
شعب محاصر منذ حوالي 20 عام.
People that are surrounded for the past 20 years.
أسلحته لا تقارن بما تملكه إسرائيل من أسلحة.
Weapons they have cannot compare at all what Israel does have or own.
لا يزال رغم الكارثة والمعاناة الهائلة لا يزال صامت. وسموتريتش امبارح قال أننا نجحنا في كل الجبهات ما عدا في قطاع غزة.
And even Smotrich have said, we might have succeeded in a lot of fronts except for the Gaza front.
أليس معجزة أن يصمد يعني المقاتلون الفلسطينيون في هذه الظروف غير المواتية، ولا تزال إسرائيل تتردد في احتلال ما تبقى من قطاع غزة.
Isn't it like a miracle in a sense that Palestinians are fighting and can still survive under unfavorable circumstances while Israel is trying to occupy the Gaza Strip?
وأخيراً
And at the end here,
يجب أن نعرف ما هي أهداف الحكومة الإسرائيلية حتى نعرف ما هو المستقبل وما هي السيناريوهات.
we have to know what is the objective of the Israeli government so that we can base our scenarios accordingly.
هل إسرائيل تريد القضاء على حركة حماس وإطلاق سراح الأسرى وجعل قطاع غزة ليس مصدراً للتهديد كما تدعي؟ هل هذه هي الأهداف؟
Does Israel really want to eliminate Hamas and then release the prisoners, hostages, or basically what are their goals? Or they want to
أم تريد تصفية القضية الفلسطينية من مختلف جوانبها وأبعادها؟
or they're trying to like liquidate the Palestinian case, from all its aspects and by all its dimensions.
بصراحة لو كان الموضوع موضوع حماس كان عرضوا على السلطة الفلسطينية أننا نريد أن نجعلكم تعودوا إلى قطاع غزة وبالتالي تساعدونا على التخلص من حماس، وهذا سيساعدهم دول عربية ودول أجنبية وتكون هذه الإمكانية متوفرة جدا.
If Hamas was the issue, it would have been presented to the Palestinian Authority by saying, here's our end, goal, and maybe they could have assisted with it, but that was never approached, that was never on the calendar.
الهدف هو الشعب الفلسطيني، الهوية الفلسطينية، الحقوق الفلسطينية، الأرض الفلسطينية، قضية اللاجئين، المقدسات. الهدف هو كل هذه الأشياء.
The goal is here, it is the Palestinian people, the Palestinian identity, the Palestinian rights, the Palestinian land, the Palestinian refugees, and the holy sites, and all those things that we've mentioned.
اليوم قرر وزير الخارجية الأمريكي منع إعطاء الفيز للرئيس الفلسطيني والطاقم الفلسطيني لحضور دورة الأمم المتحدة.
The American State Department, today they've decided to ban the Palestinian president and his team from attending the United Nations meetings.
وتعمل إسرائيل بشكل حثيث لتقويض السلطة وإقامة إمارات في كل مدينة، إمارة منفصلة عن بقية الإمارات، مثلا بالخليل، نابلس، رام الله، حتى لا يكون هناك إطار كيان فلسطيني موحد يجسد الهوية الوطنية الفلسطينية.
Israel is trying to basically create towns, new towns, so that basically they dismantle the embodiment embodiment of the Palestinian national identity.
يعني رغم كل التنازلات اللي قدمتها السلطة والتنسيق الأمني وملاحقة المقاومة، لا يريد هذه السلطة، لأن وجود سلطة واحدة توحد الضفة الغربية وقطاع غزة، توحد الشعب الفلسطيني، وهذا يفتح الطريق لإقامة دولة فلسطينية.
Despite all the concessions made by the Palestinian Authority and the security coordinations and the resistance, you know, all that was not sufficient enough to unify things, you know, and be sort of like a safety net for the Israelis.
لذلك على الفلسطيني أن يختار بين الصمود والنصر أو الاستشهاد.
That's why the Palestinians have to choose, you know, between resistance or martyrdom, you know, or basically like, you know, just not doing anything. Resistance, I'm sorry.
وهناك قواسم مشتركة تجمع الغالبية العظمى من الفلسطينيين، وعلى أساسها يجب أن نبني خيار وطني فلسطيني موحد.
And there are commonalities that unite the vast majority of Palestinians. And on the basis of building a unified Palestinian national movement, and I would say,
أنا أقول أن حتى بالتاريخ هناك أعداء يتفقوا مع بعض في مواجهة عدو مشترك.
And I would say that actually throughout history, there are enemies that who would agree with each other at least to face a common enemy.
وبالتالي نستطيع أن نعمل من أجل الوحدة. إذا كانت القيادة لا تريد فمن تحت إلى فوق حتى نفرض وحدة فلسطينية تحقق مصالح الشعب الفلسطيني.
We can always start from the bottom up if needed be, you know, so that we can have unity. If the leadership does not want to do that, we can always do that on our own.
وهلا إسرائيل في أسوأ وضع في منذ تاريخها من حيث مكانتها السياسية والأخلاقية.
And Israel is in its worst situation or worst position in the history in terms of the political or the moral standing.
وهذا الغضب العالمي يشكل أمل ويحمسنا بأن هناك أمل عندما نراه في كل العالم، في الولايات المتحدة وأوروبا واليابان. في اليابان كان في مئات الآلاف. في كوريا هناك أعداد كبيرة من المتظاهرين.
This global outrage does give us hope and enthusiasm, particularly even in countries like, you know, Japan, where basically they were idle. You know, things have started to shift or move.
يقولون لحماس استسلمي حتى يتم وقف حرب الإبادة. هل يطرح نتنياهو والحكومة الإسرائيلية على حماس إذا استسلمت أن يتم وقف المخطط؟
They tell Hamas to surrender until so that the war and, you know, this basically the idea of like, you know, genocide would stop, you know, but would they stop?
لا يطرح ذلك. هو يقول حتى لو استسلمت حماس ستبقى السيطرة الأمنية الإسرائيلية على قطاع غزة.
And even if that's the case, and even if Hamas does surrender, the Israeli security control would still remain in Gaza.
وتبقى مخططات التهجير.
And the plans of migration would continue.
والضم.
And basically taking land.
على جدول الأعمال.
That would be part of the schedule or the work schedule.
من يومين في البيت الأبيض أقيم اجتماع يبحث مستقبل قطاع غزة.
2 days ago there was a meeting at the White House for discussing the future of Gaza.
لم يشارك فيها أحد من الفلسطينيين والعرب.
No one participated from the Palestinian side or from any of the Arab side.
وشارك فيه جاريد كوشنر.
And Jared Kushner participated in that.
وتوني بلير.
And Tony Blair participated in that.
جاريد كوشنر الذي طرح تهجير غزة منذ 5 سنوات.
Jared Kushner is the one who actually suggested 5 years ago of migrating or moving Palestinians out.
وتوني بلير اللي يديه تقطر بدماء العراقيين والأفغان وفي كل مكان.
Tony Blair, whose hands is dripping with blood from what happened in Iraq and other places.
يجب أن نعمل وهناك أمل رغم أن الوضع صعب ولا أريد أن يعني وزين الوضع صعب جدا
have-
لكن هناك أمل.
We have to work, and I do not want to sugarcoat things, okay? Because I know the situation is difficult.
ويمكن أن نتحدث في فترة قادمة عن السيناريوهات المختلفة حتى أوقف لأنه يعني مطلوب مني أن أوقف الحديث.
I'd like to stop here because I've been asked twice to do so, but but I would like to talk maybe later on about the different scenarios for the future.
أنا إذا لم توقفني المديرة الجلسة لن أتوقف خلال ساعات.
Yeah, if the organizer and the coordinator of this session would not stop me, I can keep going for hours.
شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Ustaz Hani. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but we are a little bit behind with our schedule, so unfortunately we can't have extra time. We have many discussions that are going to happen throughout these 3 days, and I actually really want to thank our speakers, Musa Sadah and Raja Abdul Haq and Ustaz Hani Masri, for being with us today and for actually opening these discussions and for setting the stage for what we need to discuss and for what we need to analyze together in order to understand our role and our contribution to the struggle of our people, which, as we have been saying in this panel, is not just the struggle of our people. It's a struggle that actually started centuries and centuries ago when indigenous people started to fight against any kind of colonial project that has been imposed on them. And it's a struggle that we keep honoring and to which we have to contribute. We have to contribute taking into consideration and taking in mind the difficulties that are ahead of us, the challenges that this project, for the kind of hegemony and the kind of power that it has, imposes on us, but also looking at the testimonies and at the example that our people have set for us, which is the example of perseverance and resistance and ongoing struggle. It's the example of dignity and the example of understanding of the different levels to which we have to to which we have to confront. Today, our speakers have highlighted the regional dimension and the international dimension of our struggle. Today, we have already set this historical truth, which is that Zionism is the outcome and also the continuity of imperialist and capitalist projects that have been imposed on our region, and to which our people and the people of the Arab world keep responding. So we have also discussed the different kind of complicities and the complexities of the roles that everyone is playing in this specific scenario. We have talked about the role of regional actors, but also, again, the international interests that keep shaping the future of our people. At the same time, we have also highlighted how this remains a struggle of hope and justice that is going to bring our people to liberation and return for all of us. So thank you for being with us today, and we leave it to the next panel. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you again to Maryam and all of our panelists. One of the reasons we've come here today to Detroit is to be able to participate in supporting the people of Gaza's ability to remain on their lands. Currently, we have a fundraiser running. Proceeds will go to Mecca, which has played a critical role in this period in bringing urgently needed supplies to all areas of the Gaza Strip. You can find a raffle box near the registration tables and participate in that raffle, which will go to the fundraiser. And you can also find on the main floor in the Khalid Nahban atrium various different donation boxes where you can contribute directly to our people's ability to remain. We're going to now take a 20-minute break. We're going to return here at 4:20 for our next plenary. I'll see everybody back here in about 20 minutes.